Hello, loyal audience. The year is somewhere between 1979 to 1991. We're in the middle of the revival of Star Trek, the original series, as films. We've talked about many of them, and we are movie executives here to pitch you one more film in that original series run. Cue the intro.
Well, welcome everybody to the Mirror Movie Universe podcast. My name is Nate, and I'm one half of this shindig. And across the aisle and across the country from me is Dan, the other half of this shindig. Say hello, Dan.
Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome.
So this is going to be a somewhat different episode than what you've heard thus far. We've reviewed the entire run as our first go of I almost said episodes 1 through 6. I'm so used to doing Star Wars stuff, movies 1 through 6 of the Star Trek franchise. And we thought that when we hit the end of a franchise milestone like this, we'd give a go at pitching our own films to either exist after them or to kind of, get in the middle there. What are our ideas for what could be done better with the characters? This is our chance to not just fix a little thing with a film, but to strive for something bigger, more bombastic, something greater. And I think we're going to have a lot of fun with this. So, Dan, I'm going to put you on the spot, and we're going to do your pitched movie first. So okay. You have a movie for me?
I do. I love that guy, by the way.
He's fantastic.
I love it. Oh yeah, really?
Actually, it's going to be super easy, barely an inconvenience. Shout out to the pitch movie guy. I think that what he does is amazing. Anyway,
it's super funny. And keep in mind, we're not movie executives. We're just, well, you're a rocket scientist. I'm just, what am I, dad? I don't know. So at this point, like,
they're just
know what we're doing. We're just making stuff up. We're fans. All right, I'm gonna pitch, and no disrespect to The Undiscovered Country, I'm gonna pitch a follow-up movie to that. I think that The Undiscovered Country is great to wrap up kind of what's going on with the Klingons and show what's happening in the real world, but I want more of a fun send-off for the original crew. This film is going to focus on my guy, Sulu, George Takei in the captain's chair, captaining the Excelsior. And I want to bring back Catherine Hicks from The Voyage Home because I think she does a fantastic job as the marine biologist. She's his science officer now. She's gone through whatever training. She's there. She's on the ship. Bring back whoever else you can from the original cast. Given who they got in Generations, I don't think that Nimoy and Kelley are going to come back. I'm okay with that. I think you bring back James Doohan, Walter Koenig, Nichelle Nichols, maybe Shatner if he'll do it, but he's not going to be the main guy in it. I don't know. Even if it's just like a little cameo thing. Bring back whoever. This is my pitch. The people at Starfleet Command are getting word that the USS Enterprise is out there kind of messing things up. And they're very confused by it because the USS Enterprise is decommissioned. And so they send Captain Sulu and whoever else we get, blah, 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 to investigate. And so he goes out there and he's trying to figure out what's happening. And you see the old Enterprise from the original series, not the refit from the movies, but the original Enterprise there, and he's so confused. And maybe it's the Tholians. We'll start with them. It's caught in the Tholian web, and so he's like, Scotty, we have to get them out of there. And Scotty's trying to get him out of there, and they get him out, and then they goes off to do something else, and they're trying to catch up, and they're trying to figure out what's happening, and they realize that it is a callback. This is a big callback to an episode that you and I have talked about a couple times, to a piece of the action. It is the Iotians.
a deeply mimicking and imitating people.
Yes. At the end of the episode, what does Kirk do? He's like, "You're the captain. You're the lieutenant. You're the whatever." And McCoy leaves
his communicator. Oh my God.
And so,
Okay.
and at first
All
I
right.
thought like, oh, it's just like a walkie-talkie. Who cares? No,
Mhm.
it's got every captain's log, every medical log, every
Mhm.
whatever of all their adventures. So the Iosians have done it, and you get three actors. I don't have any casting for this. It's the early '90s.
Mhm.
I know that Jim Carrey does a fantastic Shatner impression. Maybe you get him to do it. Maybe I actually think it'd be cooler.
Because that would be great because he's copying him. That's great.
Yes, and
Um,
so it's just you get three people to do their best impression. Maybe you get a woman in there to get some other, like, so it's not just three white guys, but
mhm.
you some diversity in there, and it's them going out and trying to be Kirk, Spock, and Bones, because those are the only three people they interacted with in that
Mhm.
episode on the planet, and they're just screwing things up. So
Yeah.
they're like going and fighting the Gorn, and you get like,
Mhm.
so it's the best, is the greatest hits of the original series. You do the Tholians, you do the Gorn, you've got them like, maybe they have like these terrifying creatures on board the ship, and Sulu's like, what the heck is that? And they're like, wow, these are tribbles. And there's like, that's not what tribbles are.
Mhm.
Right, like they're trying to make their way in this world. Having Catherine Hicks there is really fun because as an outsider it's easy for Sulu to explain.
Yes, because she'd be like, "What's this?" And he's like, "One time we did this." And okay, yeah, okay, cool, cool, cool.
Exactly. And then you get all the best bits from the original series, like all the catchphrases and stuff. You've got whoever, I keep saying Carrie, but whoever it is being like, I'm responsible for the lives of 434 crewmen.
Mhm.
And and so Sulu is trying to get them out of these situations. He can call on whoever his friends are and be like, Scotty, how did we do this? Chekhov, how did we do this? Whatever. So you bring them in. And at the same time, he's trying to give them their own culture. He's trying to just push them and be like, your culture is important. You
Mhm.
can't take ours. Like, you have to hang on to your heritage. So that's kind of a nice through
Yeah,
point. And then
yeah.
I want it to end with the Iosians trying to prove that they can be a member of Starfleet and heading off into the neutral zone. We have not had the Romulans as a villain yet, and we won't for a while in any film,
Mhm.
and have a very, very tense standoff in the neutral zone between a Romulan commander, the Iosians with this outdated starship, and Sulu. And I want it to be
Mhm.
like the good and the bad and the ugly. You have no idea who's going to shoot at who. You have no
Mhm.
idea. Like, the tension is building and building and building, and they're trying to figure out what's going to happen, who's going to blink first, who's targeting who. And eventually, Sulu is able to kind of keep the peace with the Romulans.
Mhm.
The Iosians are disabled or maybe even destroyed. And he kind of has this moment with them where they're like, is this a Federation ruse? And he's like, well, if it is, it didn't work that well. And
Mhm.
maybe he gets like a little cup of tea and he's sipping it and he's showing them like, hey, do you want to just back away? And they're like, yeah, we do. And he says, okay. And they just kind of back away. They go back to their own corners.
Mhm.
But I think it'd be a really fun way to show off like the best moments of the original series and have a little fun, have a little send off. So I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's really fun. I think so. So I think it's interesting that you came up with something like this. And of the new Star Wars movies, you haven't seen Rogue One
No.
because Rogue One has none of the main cast. It's not part of the main story. It's just kind of like this little pop out into its own little continuity, and that's what this feels like. It's just a lot of fun.
Mhm.
If you were going to reboot a TV series, this would be the pilot of
Yeah.
the rebooted, like, oh, we're gonna have some fun, we're gonna do a season of whatever. um if there was a Star Trek Picard series for the original cast, this would be the pilot of it because you get to do all the greatest hits. I think it's really fun. And I also think it's really great because um my pitch also features the original Enterprise and the Romulans. And so I swear I didn't talk to Dan before this, everybody.
No, it's true.
But
We've never met before.
no, yeah, we're definitely not brothers. But
Yeah.
I love that. A Piece of the Action is one of those is one of those episodes that we watched. Like, it was one of the great ones that we watched as a kid.
Yeah. It's
And
just super fun.
yeah, I think the Tholian thing is great. I think the standoff with the Romulans is great. I think hitting all of the greatest hits from the original series is just fantastic. It also
Cool.
reminds me of an episode of Voyager where I think that the crew like gets replicated or copied or something. And then later on, you discover that like, oh, it's some later episode and they're all dying or something. And it turns out that it's like the machine replicas. They're not actually the real crew. And then they meet
Yes.
the real crew. It kind of is reminiscent of that. And I really like the concept. I'm trying to think of other original series
Minor thing,
episodes that
they
you could do.
think like Fizbin, the card game that Kirk
Mhm.
invents, is like their national pastime, and they're flabbergasted that Sulu doesn't know
Mhm.
it, and they're trying to teach it to him. I think that would just be like a super
Yeah.
fun moment. And also, like, I think that the other cool thing is you can show kind of how lucky they got getting
Mhm.
out of some of the scrapes in the original thing.
Mhm.
Like it's just like crazy that they were able to defeat the Gorn by putting together the thing or whatever.
Mhm.
Um and you could even do like a really dumb episode like Spock's brain or something and be like, oh well, this is our second Spock. The first one, her
He
brain
lost
is
his brain.
controlling a whole civilization.
Yeah.
So
I I think you could play so many moments for really fun comedy. Like if they call the other ship, if they call like the Excelsior, because I think Sulu's the captain of the Excelsior, have them like use a Scottish accent because they call up to Scotty in the episode A Piece of the Action, and then they would
yes.
think that that's like how everyone in the ships talks or something. Like oh man, um, yeah, I think that's brilliant. I think
Well,
that
thank
that's
you.
that I think that that would be really fun, and I would actually pay money to watch that. Um, yeah. Uh, God, that's way better than mine. Holy crap. Oh man.
Well, thank you.
Uh,
I appreciate it. It's fun. I was nervous about it because it all throughout the movies that we're doing, I'm like, oh, I love the consequences. I love that this one flows from this one, flows from this one. And then I was
mhm,
like, throw all that out. Let's just do the original series greatest hits. Like,
mhm.
I don't know.
No, I think it's great. I also I just like that it's lighter. Final Frontier tried to be funny in a lot of ways that it wasn't, and they tried a lot of humor that doesn't work for Star Trek. Brands of humor, slapstick, all of this. And if you go back to A Piece of the Action, which is probably one of the funniest episodes of the original series, you can have a lot of fun with it, and it can get the right kind of humor injected in there. I was saying during our Search for Spock episode that it gets the humor right just because the characters are together and like each other, and that's why it's so enjoyable. You
Yeah.
can play so much of that. You could play so much of that in this.
Yeah.
Oh man, I like it a lot. I
Well,
would
thank
make this
you.
movie stamp of approval right
All
there.
right. Well, I'm curious. What's your pitch? So
Right.
you have a movie for me, sir?
Yeah. Well, sir, I do. And actually, my thing would be, so I did not like the about the Final Frontier, how it killed continuity between Voyage Home and the rest of the series.
Sure.
I'm going to also say a caveat. So this is something I would pitch between Voyage Home and Final Frontier, possibly just wiping Final Frontier from existence.
Mm-hmm.
I would also a caveat on here is that my edit to Search for Spock occurred, in which that David is the only person who died on Genesis. And he's the only person who's interred there when the planet goes nuts. Okay. So this happens after Voyage Home. They're all reinstated back into the fleet, and they're all split up in different parts of the fleet. Okay.
Oh, love that. Love
Yeah.
that.
So Kirk is he's home. He's having bad dreams about David. And him dying. We also find out, because she kind of gets put by the wayside, we find out that Carol Marcus has died in some scrape, possibly with the Romulans along the neutral zone. And Kirk, we can establish this in some opening exposition. Kirk is woken up to an alert of an incursion on the neutral zone with the Romulans, who has just killed his ex-lover. And an entire fleet has been destroyed. A Romulan fleet has been wiped out. And they think that the Federation did it. And Kirk and crew go to action in a mix of the New Enterprise, the USS Excelsior, and a bunch of different ships. They're all scattered among the fleet, like I said. They go out to the neutral zone and they meet the Romulans. And just as they're about to cool things down, all of the Federation ships open fire and obliterate part of the Romulan fleet. No one knows what's going on. And in the confusion, Kirk starts calling the rest of the crew, and they're all stationed on the ships. He's like, "Uhura, what's going on? Sulu, did you fire?" All this kind of stuff. And instead of hailing or answering, they're all snapped, just teleported back into their old uniforms on the old bridge of the ship, of the old Enterprise. And we see the being that has transported them there, and it is David, Kirk's son, floating out in space like a ye olde Star Trek god. Because I'm doing the thing from the original series where a member of the crew or a friend or somebody gets ultimate power and goes mad with it.
Yeah.
So it turns out that David has wiped out all of the Romulans because he's found out that he's God at this point. He's found out that his mother has been killed in some kind of Romulan thing that might have been an accident. He's starting to wipe out all the Romulans. He's making speeches to Kirk like, "I'm finally achieving peace," and all of this. So they're simultaneously aware of the conspiracy going on the outside in the real world and what's happening in this kind of dream state when they're on the Enterprise. If you've seen Inception, it's kind of like that, like where things are happening simultaneously and they're semi-aware of both of them.
Okay, so so Kirk is still there. They're all split out throughout the fleet, like trying to stop firing, trying to find peace, but they're also on the Enterprise having a face-to-face. Cool.
Yeah. So David keeps presenting them on this fake Enterprise with challenges and adventures they had in their youth, trying to distract them from reality because they're the only ones who know what's going on. So he's trying to stop them from stopping this war. But in reality, the Federation fleet is steaming towards Romulus, ready to wipe it out. And in the ye olde Enterprise, Spock starts to theorize that the proto matter stuff on Genesis that David came into contact with gave him these sort of godlike powers. And because he was the only person who was still interred there when the planet collapsed, it all concentrated into him, and he basically became able to manipulate matter and time and space and all this kind of stuff.
Very cool.
So the rest of the plot is a game of like cat and mouse, trying to solve problems both in the current Federation fleet, like, "Scotty, we have to disable all the torpedoes," as well as the old Enterprise, like, "Oh, it's all these old data tapes, we got to figure out all this kind of stuff," without David, seeing or knowing and all this kind of stuff. So at the end, the Federation fleet shows up at Romulus, with several ships maybe taken out of action by sabotage, like Scotty, fries the engines of the Lexington or whatever. And the ships are ready to fire and waste the planet. And Spock tells Kirk that if they cause an antimatter explosion in the dream world and basically wipe out the old Enterprise, destroying their past and symbolically all of this kind of stuff, they will stop David's power, but it will also likely kill him. And Kirk has to make this decision, and Kirk has to blow up the fantasy Enterprise to stop the bloodshed. And so that happens. And it's a very poignant moment. The music builds up and it goes boom. And yeah, we flash forward to an epilogue a couple of months later. And Kirk is asking Spock why she's like, "Why did my son choose destruction? If he could have been a god, he could have created, things." And Spock is like, "Kirk, Jim, Genesis with all of its power was still unstable. Creation is much more, it's much harder than destruction. Stable creation is harder than destruction." And so he fell into this angry state where he was destroying everything. There are joint funerals held on Vulcan for the crews of the Federation and the Romulan fleets that were lost. And suddenly the destroyed ships, like all of the caskets and coffins like vanish, and all of the destroyed ships show up in orbit. And they're like, "Oh my God, is this David doing this?" But he doesn't show up. Spock theorizes that David is not powerful enough to have restored everything back to the way it was. And at the end of the film, we cut to a scene of David in a cell or some kind of room, and he's there. We don't see who his jailer is, but he asks him he's like, "How can you keep me here? I'm an all powerful being." And the jailer, in a sort of talk downy kind of way, he's like, "Oh, quit your self-important blabbering. It's very rare that someone of your species becomes one of us." And then it kind of pans around, and it's John Delancey playing Q, and he's like, now tell me about the species from which you come from. And that's we're going to cut to black, and how that's how the film is going to end. So turns out David was a member of the Q continuum, and he was messing stuff up. And Kirk had to kind of sever his link with his past and give up this fantasy world to destroy him. Turns out it didn't destroy him, and that he's just in custody with Q. And he has also sparked Q's interest in humanity, because he would have been the first human that Q saw, and he messed a whole bunch of stuff up doing it. It's not perfect. I don't particularly think, like, if I was pitched this in 1989, because this would have been after Voyage Home, before, and maybe instead of Final Frontier, Next Generation's already airing, I would be like, that show is only in its second season. Like, it's kind of crappy. I'm not going to connect it to it. But I wanted to do something where Kirk and Spock have to let go of the past. And I wanted to do something where, the death of David means something more. And I wanted to do something where they were facing an adversary who actually had an all powerful, power. It's not as fun as yours. And it tries to be a little bit more pretentious than yours. But, I think that if you fixed this yourself, audience, you could probably pull something out of this. It's I don't know. It's mostly it's kind of a mess. Some elements could be taken out.
I think so. First of all, I love tying in John Delancey as Q. I mean, if you go back to The Next Generation in its earliest season, season 1 and season 2, he was there a lot. I mean, it was like, is it a Q episode or is it a Wesley Crusher episode? Like, that's what it was. And so bringing him in, I think, makes a lot of sense. I assume that we'll get there at some point. But if we don't talk about it with the Next Generation films, I think it's a big letdown that he's not in any of them.
Yes.
It really, like, he was one of the best guest stars of that series. The villain, maybe antagonist is a better word for it, never brought up in any of the films. And so to bring him into this one, I think, is really cool.
Yeah.
From a feasibility standpoint, I do know that the actor who played David passed.
Oh, really?
Very young from complications with AIDS. I don't know if he would have been alive to make this, but I'm just going to assume that he was, and let this happen, because I think it's really cool. Or you recast him because he's an all-powerful being and can look like whatever you want him to look like.
Sure.
I mean, Savick looks totally different, and we're fine with that, right? So, the only thing that I would do is make the Romulans more. Yeah, I don't know, something.
They're just window dressing right now, and you can have that window dressing be whatever you want. I wanted David's character to become something all powerful, connected to Q, and I wanted Kirk to have to destroy him. Yeah. The rest can completely be redone, audience, and it does not have to be as bat crap crazy as I said. But they should do something more. I'm with you.
I mean, I think that one of the best things, so I love my favorite, the original series episode. I think the best one that exists.
You're going to say Balance of Terror?
Is Balance of Terror.
Okay.
And it's because the Romulan commander, played by Mark Leonard, is so good. And you empathize with him, this battle-weary commander. And at the end, he has that moment where he's like, in another world, you and I could have been friends. And it's just such a great... that's the only thing I think this is missing, is some kind, the Romulan something who is ready to fight and will destroy the Federation, but doesn't quite want to.
Yeah,
I think that's the only piece that I would add.
Yeah, I'm with you. Some intrigue with the Romulans, because I had the same thought that you did, where it was like, I want them in a Star Trek film, because they don't really show up aside from that one gal in Final Frontier.
Right.
And I don't know what to do with them. I know that in my Star Trek film, I want David to be all powerful and killed by Kirk. And I want it to be related to why Q has such an interest in humanity. It's like, because this is the first one he encounters. But how the Romulans fit into that needs its own front man character.
Mhm.
It needs someone like, can't be the guy played by Mark Leonard because he dies, but it needs someone like that.
Yes.
God, you must really love the season 1 finale of Strange New Worlds
I
too.
very much do.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because audience that basically takes place in that episode. But yeah, I think what I have said needs a lot of work. I think that what you have pitched needs a significantly less work to work. And so out of the two, I'm going to endorse yours over mine.
Oh, don't
I've
do
got
that. You can't. Here's the thing: you can never vote for your own. It's just like bad form. So I'm voting for yours. You're voting for mine.
I don't know, because like I my movie has a lot of ideas that I like, but I don't think it'll be fun. I don't think it'll
No,
be
I
fun to watch.
love the Q twist. I love seeing, up until now in these films, right? We have never seen huge sweeping battles. I
Mm-hmm.
remember when I was in high school, I was talking to a friend of mine
Mm-hmm.
who you know well. He was the other groomsman in my wedding,
Yes.
and I was telling him about Star Trek, and he's like, "Oh, they're great space battles." And I was
Like once in Deep Space Nine.
like
Oh, once or twice in
not
Deep Space Nine.
like not really. Like it's always
Yeah.
one ship against one ship. So I love that in yours, like there's fleets and they are
Yeah.
destroying each other, and you've got a big budget movie. Like you can do this. You can
Not like it would be
actually.
feasible to do that after Voyage Home, but yeah.
I mean, yeah, we're gonna say that we have whatever money we want for this, right? Like
Mhm.
we can do whatever. We're gonna build all the miniatures in the world and explode them. Like, that's all good.
Yeah.
But I love that. Like, I love that you get fleets. I love that you get great space battles. I love that you get this tense standoff with the Romulans, and you have that moment where it's like, I love how you're saying like sabotage it, like stop blowing stuff up. So
Mhm.
Scotty's sabotaging this, and Uhura's like jamming communications
Yeah.
and whatever. Like that's really cool to
Yeah.
see.
Yeah. I yeah, I think framework wise and tension wise, it could use better pacing and a better ending. Because like no one actually died is kind of a cop out, but it's how you introduce Q just coming in and fixing the mistakes of someone else. I do this because there's an episode of Voyager where Q's son, I think, is like a very young god who's completely irresponsible, and he mucks up a bunch of stuff on the ship. And I think he like gets the Borg to come after them or do something like that. And Q just comes in and saves everything, puts everything back to normal, screams, "Don't provoke the Borg," and then leaves. And maybe I was just subconsciously thinking about that episode when I made this, but could use some structure. I still like the ideas, but it could use some work.
No, I think
Could
it's
use some
very
work.
cool. I mean, it's kind of a callback to Trelane in that original series episode, who's kind of
Yeah.
like a Q. He's this all-powerful being, but he's like a child and he just wants to do
Mm.
war games. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's a really cool theme. If you had all the power in the universe,
Mm-hmm.
what would you do? Right? Everybody thinks that they would like solve world hunger
Right.
and be super peaceful and stuff, but what would you really do?
That's yeah. And that's I mean, what I was trying to say at the end there, where like Kirk is like, why did he destroy instead of create?
Yeah.
Spock, I tried to do a cop out of like, Genesis was unstable and he was born out of this, and creation is much a much more difficult path than destruction and all this, but I still don't know. There's elements that I think need to be called out, and there's elements that are missing. But I still like the ideas.
I love it.
I like
I
the ideas.
really do.
Yeah.
Let's put it to the audience. We've fixed a bunch of Star Trek movies. You can't see these; they're never going to get made. But
Nope.
fix them.
Fix ours.
Fix
Yeah.
ours. Go do it.
But in the meantime, be sure to like and subscribe and all of that bull crap. And we'll see you next time when we tackle a different film franchise. We'll come back to Star Trek, but for now, we're going to venture into the unknown. Second star to the right, straight on till morning, or whatever. But yeah, we'll see you.
We should have ended with our signatures.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But thank you for watching and or listening. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
See ya.